I do not remember the first time I heard the story of the well, but it must have been when I was very young, sitting among the older villagers as they spoke in hushed voices on long, cold nights. They said it had been there before any of our houses, before the church, before the road that cut through the fields. Once it had been the heart of the village, its water clear and sweet, the rope-worn bucket rising each morning with the sound of dripping freshness. Then came the autumn when the water turned black, thick and foul-smelling, and the people whispered of curses. That was also the year they took the girl. She was not from here, they said. Her hair was black as the crow's, her eyes pale as winter sky. Some called her a healer, but more whispered the word witch. They claimed she could speak to things in the forest and that she knew the names of the dead. When sickness struck the children, when 3 of them died within a week, they said it was her doing. No one could remember the trial, if there even was one. Only the night when the wind screamed through the trees and the villagers dragged her to the well with ropes around her wrists and ankles. She screamed and fought, but when they pushed her to the edge, her voice changed. It became low, guttural, a sound that seemed too big for her small frame, like the earth itself groaning. They lowered her down into the darkness, the rope creaking as it unwound. They did not pull it back up. What rose from the depths was not a scream, but a string of words in a language no one knew, each syllable slow and dripping with hatred. By morning, they had nailed heavy timbers over the well and bound them with iron. They never drew water from it again, but the curse, they said, remained. If you stood too close at night, you would hear her whisper. If you answered, you would not be seen again. The rule was simple: never look inside, and never speak to what calls from below. I had never believed such things. Folklore, I thought, made for long winters and bored minds. That changed when I moved into the countryside one early autumn, seeking quiet after too many years in the noise of the city. The house I bought was small, old, its floors creaking underfoot, its porch looking out over the fading gold of harvested fields. I spent my first day unpacking, the second walking the property. That was when I saw it. It was tucked behind the house, half hidden by weeds and tall grass. The stone was mottled with moss, the wooden cover warped and cracked, the rusted bands hanging loose. It didn't feel ominous, just there, as though it had been waiting a very long time. At the post office, I mentioned it casually to the woman behind the counter. Her hands stopped moving, and she looked at me for a long, silent moment before counting my change. "Keep away from it," she said finally, her voice flat, her eyes avoiding mine. That night was colder. I lay awake for a while, listening to the creak of the rafters and the distant cry of an owl. Sometime after midnight, I heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound from behind the house. At first, I thought it was the wind catching a loose shutter, but when I opened the back door and stepped into the cold, I could see the weeds swaying around the well in the still air. The lid trembled ever so slightly. Then I heard it, a woman's voice, soft and low, rising up from the depths. It spoke my name. It was almost gentle, like someone who had been alone too long. Something in me wanted to go closer, to lift the cover and find the source. I forced myself to turn away and close the door. 2 nights later, it came again. This time the voice was sharper, the words clipped. My name, repeated twice, then silence, then a quiet, breathy laugh that didn't sound like it belonged to any living thing. I tried to sleep but could not. The darkness outside seemed thicker, as though it pressed against the walls. I thought of the stories, of the warnings, and told myself it was a trick of the wind. The following evening, just after sunset, I heard the sound of something dragging along the back porch. When I opened the curtains, nothing was there. But the weeds around the well were bent, as though something had moved through them recently. I closed the curtains again, telling myself it was just an animal. Later that night, the voice returned, clearer than before. It did not call my name at first. Instead, it spoke in that slow, unfamiliar language, the syllables heavy and wet. Then, in perfect clarity, it said, "Come here." I stayed in bed, pulling the blankets over my head like a child. Sleep came in fragments, broken by dreams of cold stone and black water. In one dream, I was standing at the edge of the well, looking down. The darkness was not empty. Something was moving far below, pale hands reaching up toward me. When I woke, my throat hurt, raw as if I'd been shouting. The window was open, though I was certain I'd closed it before sleeping. On the floor beneath it were wet footprints, too small to be mine, too human to be an animal's. They led from the window toward the hallway and ended at the front door, which stood slightly ajar. The days that followed blurred together. The voice came every night now, always starting soft, then growing more insistent. Sometimes it begged, other times it laughed, and once it wept, long, broken sobs that filled the air with a cold that sank into my bones. I stopped going into town, stopped answering the phone. I watched the well from my window, waiting for something to move. On the seventh night, just after midnight, I heard the lid shift. This time, I did not stay inside. I don't know if it was curiosity or something stronger, something pulling at me. I stepped outside into the cold, the grass wet under my bare feet. The moon was high, casting pale light across the yard. The well's cover lay half off, as though something had pushed it from below. The voice rose from the darkness, not soft this time, but sharp, urgent, almost angry. My name 3 times in quick succession. I leaned closer. The air from the well was damp and smelled faintly of rot. Somewhere deep below, I thought I saw movement, a flash of pale skin, a glimmer of eyes. And then, in a tone almost like a smile, it said, "You're almost here." I should have turned away. I should have bolted the door, sealed the windows, and prayed until sunrise, but my fingers were already curling over the rim of the well, my knuckles pale, my breath fogging in the cold. The stone was slick as if it had been sweating. Below, I heard the faint drip of water. It wasn't steady, it was erratic, almost like a pulse. The sound quickened when I leaned closer. Then the voice came again, softer now, almost tender. "It's cold here, but you'll be warm with me." Something pale moved in the darkness. A hand emerged first, impossibly long, with stretched, almost translucent skin clinging to sharp bones. The nails were cracked and blackened, and they scraped against the stone as it reached for me. When it touched my wrist, the cold was so deep it burned, and my muscles froze. The air thickened, as though the night itself was pressing in. The forest around me blurred, the moon dimmed, and the sound of wind faded to nothing. I wasn't standing in my yard anymore. I was somewhere else, a hollow place, ancient and empty. The voice didn't echo from below now. It was inside my head, coiling through my thoughts like smoke. "You belong to me." I felt the pull. It was stronger than gravity, as if my very soul were leaning forward. My chest pressed against the cold rim, my breath shallow. I looked down, and the water was no longer reflecting me. Her face stared back, hair drifting weightless in the black water, skin pale as bone, eyes wide and colorless. Her grin was stretched too far, revealing teeth jagged and broken, yet sharp. The hand on my wrist tightened, my knees buckled, and the stone edge scraped my ribs. Her other hand emerged from the dark, wet and skeletal, grasping my other wrist with a strength that felt inhuman. I gasped, but no sound left my throat. The last sight I caught of the world above was the small circle of night sky shrinking, until it was gone. And then there was only darkness, the smell of wet earth, and her voice, no longer calling, but whispering directly into my ear. "They will come for you, and you will bring them to me." Now the well stands quiet again. The house is dark. The grass grows over the path that once led here. But on certain nights, when the wind stills and the moon glows white, a voice rises from its depths. It will speak your name, and if you answer, you will join me.